Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the industry. And Ethan is back as usual. Ethan, why weren't you here last week?
I know what you mean. I exposed you.
So I had to travel because we're launching this thing called iPhone 11. You guys might have heard about it. Because me and my man, CEO, that guy. We're talking about iPhone 11, which is like the 11th phone. In case you guys don't know.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not about me. It's about Uche.
Yeah.
Let's welcome the guest to the show. Bro.
Yeah, Uche. My mic. Uche.
Yes, sir.
I know my Igbo is not as polished, but Uche Nwaohiri.
It's
Nwaohiri.
Yes.
All my Igbo brothers will come for me now. Yeah, whatever. Uche, welcome. Welcome to the show. Uche is we'll introduce him but Uche is a production designer. I don't think we have a lot of that here, but we'll talk about that. But we don't really have a lot of great production designers. Maybe if anybody can prove me wrong in the comment section, but whatever, I said what I said.
Let the drama.
Yeah. Uche, thank you so much for coming through. It's been a pleasure working with you, and it's a pleasure having you here, driving all the way.
Likewise.
Usually, we always talk about stuff that happened during the week. And as Ethan already pushed,
Where I went.
yeah, okay, yeah. By the way, Ethan was playing Apex Legends. Moving on.
I didn't qualify. There's a tournament going on. I didn't make it. I'm very broke.
Yeah. So, Apple TV.
Apple TV.
So last week, Apple TV Plus was announced. I have no idea why they why they fapping Disney's like Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus.
Because they already had Apple TV.
Like
so
fuck that.
Like
Find another name. Yeah, whatever. But a couple of trailers remind me. There's one called C.
Yes.
Have
you seen anything?
Have you seen anything about Apple TV?
Apple
No.
Okay.
No.
You don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not really into gadgets like that.
All that just about Netflix cowering and Netflix stocks going down. This bullshit. I don't know.
One of bullshit guys. Netflix has over 118 million. Only God knows when I counted that. That was then. You can't wake up today, even though you have loyal fans who mostly live in America. I think your 20 shows are going to change.
Is it up to 20? I want to like trailers for like 4.
Well, they have about 20, quite a few actually, some random shows. They're going to change the industry drastically. And then there's a giant like Disney, that's coming. And these guys have over how many years? 100-something years of content that they're going to pull from everyone. So I don't know. But forget that you don't know much about Apple, right? You don't care about the devices. So you think if someone like Apple, which they are doing now, coming up with their own Netflix service, which is called Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
You think that's going to drastically change the industry?
Well, I mean, obviously they're not novices to it. So if they're going to come in, they must have a plan. They must have a strategy. They must have done their research. They've done well with their devices. This is new territory. Well, I mean, it's arguable, but it's you cannot deny the fact that
I'm pretty sure
it's done well.
someone.
Whatever. You have a note. 8.
No, let me just finish. I want to hear his argument.
I think competition is good.
Good, right?
Competition is good because the more competition there is, the more work there is at the end of the day.
Someone was telling me, normally when they launch a phone, you got my man, head of production design, Johnny Ive, who's there telling you, the iPhone is the most beautiful one we've ever designed to date. So how's he going to introduce? He's not there anymore now, right? So how are they going to introduce Apple TV with no Johnny Ive?
I don't know. But speaking of, let me deviate a bit from the Apple TV with this shit, by the way. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not. All that rubbish. Oh, yeah, if you buy the iPhone 11, we'll give you 1 year subscription. By the way, let's talk about this iPhone 11 for a bit. Like, I feel like they have a mini cooker. Like, mini electric cooker. Like, what the hell? Dude, what kind of design? I don't know. I think they need a new Steve Jobs. Somebody said no. But I'm like, look, I don't know how this thing is going to fly. It sucks. And that's the only thing that they have. Oh, yeah, the camera is great. It shoots 35mm. It shoots this, it shoots that. After that, what next? What do you have to say? You were there now. What do you have to say for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't there all the time. I was there like everybody else online watching it. So, but the truth is, brand equity is real. No matter how perception is, how fluffy it is, your brand equity is your brand equity. It's like a cult. It is a cult.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't need to have a solid reason to buy it.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's something about the exclusivity that they've been able to, achieve, put forward. And I see a lot of people who have the phones, don't necessarily know what all the features are, don't care, but are happy to be associated with the brand. So obviously they're going to ride off that.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into why we're here. We'll talk about the event I went for later. We're here about Uche, and this is the only CV I know that opens with. It says Uche's World. And it has a logo, guys. I don't know. Can we cut this into the screen later? I don't know. It's like the Wu-Tang Clan logo. It's like a bat signal. Is that what they used to hire you? You just flash it in the sky and you just start running. All right, James, tell us about Uche. Oh no, you want to tell us about that logo?
Yeah. I'm a big comic fan. I like to draw a lot, and I figured that I really like the bat logo, the Batman's logo. So I felt like unconsciously I just ended up creating something that seemed like the Batman.
All the shows we're making a crap. What do we need? All right, cool.
Oh,
so let me just quickly read. It's in like first person mode. Over the past 13 years, I've rendered my services in the capacity of art director, production designer, or props master to multinational companies such as Facebook, in bracket domestic arrival, mobile students, and girl effect TVCs, YouTube, MTN, commercial. Why am I mentioning MTN? Did they sponsor this thing? Oh, by the way, can you just, let's go there. Yes. This episode is sponsored by Bon Voyage. Yeah. All those empty glasses. We had like a super party yesterday. Yeah, even though. It was like a what?
It was the hangout.
It was a hangout. Oh my god! Like I took like a sip and I slept. Moving on. I'm not. Okay. Yeah. Anyway.
Moving on. Back to Uche's really long.
Yeah. Juliet. Yeah. So basically, there are a lot of things he's done. MTN, Salaram TV commercials, Nkemo Patience MTN Goodie Bag campaign. Onga seasoning, golden penny noodles. You've done a lot of commercials, Nigerian roofing sheets, Olympic milk, and so on and so forth. In the course of my work, I've had the privilege to work with several renowned television and film directors and producers such as Mr. Abiodun Aleja, Mr. Tolu Ajayi, who's my guy, Mr. Femi Odubemi, who is my Oga. I can't say he's my guy. Yeah. And some other guys. Mohammed Atta, who's my other guy too. And a lot of producers as well, such as Durand Lesser. Is that how to pronounce it? Durand
Lesser.
Among a few others, all of whom you can contact for verification. Yeah, I'm going to call them right now. I've also worked with foreign directors such as Liam
Condale.
Yes, a South African guy who we love.
Yeah.
We totally love you guys, South African guys. Yeah. And a couple of other South African people, some German people, and so on and so forth. I've worked as a prop master with foreign art directors such as Stefan. God, you've worked with a lot of people.
Stefan Erasmus.
God damn it, man. Like, there's so many names and like over 50.
Yeah.
Shit.
Well, I mean.
Yeah. So he's done a couple of projects: Biosand Silhouettes, Too Young, Too Far, Too Late, When Fishes Drown, Spice Joan, Sports Talks, Youth.com, Saints and the Silly, Foreplay, commissioning of the APM terminal, the launch of Vivante magazine, The Encounter, which is like one of my favorite. Have you seen The Encounter? It's a story about Ojukwu. It's like a really cool stuff. I'll show it to you, and I think I'll put it in. It was done by Tolu Ajayi, by the way.
Yeah.
For a special day, he was also the production designer, the technical what was that title I gave you?
Technical consultant. Yeah.
For Ajoche. It's not like I'm bringing all my Ajoche people here, by the way, but I'm just and then also for this new show, which I will not mention, and probably by the time this video is out, you'll probably see the trailer online.
Okay.
But that's who Uche is. So Uche, apart from all these other things and names, what other recent stuff have you like done? Like before we get into the questions, like what other stuff?
Okay, well, I did production design for a feature film.
Which That one.
called The Resident.
Ah, yeah. The trailer's gonna come out quite soon. I haven't cut it yet. Yeah, moving on. I think that was like your, it's like your first major film thing.
Well, I had done some films. Well, yes, it was my first film that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Because I did it the way I felt it was supposed to be done.
Right. Cool. Yeah. When the trailer comes, I was a part of that process. So
Yes. A
I'm
huge
trying to be
part.
humble now. I'm part of it. Oh God, me. Anyway, but the first question. Let me jump to the first question, which is why production design. I know that you used to be an architect. So what happened? What made you go towards that route?
Okay, well, I mean, this is new to me. Spilling my guts is a bit new to me.
That's what we do here.
But I'll give a brief period of my life. I came out of school after studying architecture. I was in that place where, there wasn't a job. There was silence. Yeah, and I think I got a bit carried away. I got a bit impatient. So we all need funds. We all need money, and there wasn't much of it at the time. And one evening, I sat with some friends, and then we got introduced to a friend who was into something shady, and I was sold on the idea. But I got home later in the night, and I was conflicted, and I prayed about it, and it was a very immature, raw prayer. Like, Father, I'm going to do this. I was going to meet the guy the next day. I'm going to meet him, and we're going to be in business. I know I shouldn't do this, but I don't think there's any other way. However, I know that your eyes are on me, and if you want to save me, then you bring me a sign.
God's gonna be like, yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I went there the next day. I knocked on his gate. He never opened the door. And I came back home. I came back home. I was frustrated. But then a few days later, I got introduced to a producer. I didn't know anything about film at the time. I actually went to him just to do anything. And he said, a friend of mine told me about him and said, you can go there and you can audition, you could act, you could be an extra or something. I said, well, I could. So I went in and I had a meeting with him, and he asked me what I studied and all that, and I told him I studied architecture. He asked me to talk about myself. I told him, I draw comics from time to time. I like drawing and stuff like that. And then he had an idea. And he asked me if I had heard about production design, and I said no. And then he, proceeded to talk to me about what production design was. And when he talked to me about it, I realized that it was a lot like architecture, because it is essentially design, conceiving a plan, explaining it to a team, and then supervising the creation of that plan, So I figured, look, you know what, this is just another name for what I went to school for, another medium and all that. So he said he was going to try me. I became an apprentice for the production designer of a project that he was working on. And I had been going to the office and heading out with her, for about, I think, a week plus.
Sorry, how long ago was this?
This was in 2005. Yeah. And so one morning I just came to the office, and then he said to me that he had fired the production designer and that I was going to become the production designer. It
that guy
was
waiting for you outside.
shocking.
You took my job.
Yeah, it was.
That architect took my
It was really shocking though. But I mean, I was excited, but I was scared. Within that time, he had already given me a lot of books that I read about production design, about filmmaking, about understanding how to break down a script. There was also another thing he made me do, which was do a storyboard, because he said to me, he explained to me how storyboards worked, and I figured that they were a lot like comics in the sense that they were sequential art, So I was able to interpret a script he gave to me visually in a storyboard. And then, we went on from there. Incidentally, that project, I was the lead character and I was the production designer. And I never looked back.
Yeah, let's do contract.
I never looked back after that.
All right.
And I was written.
So that's how. I can tell you what happened when you went to knock on that guy's gate. Though. So the Lord sent him a text message. Did you have text messages back?
Well, I mean, he probably was inside though.
But
But he just did
But
that.
that's cool though. I mean, that
figured-
sort of worked out for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, you sure?
Yeah.
No, mine is weird.
No,
Mine is weird.
I wanted to ask before I jump because I have like a couple of other, what's your process like? Because we're going to jump into things like what's missing, all that stuff. Because like I said, I don't profess to be an expert, but I know that majority of people who say they're producers and they want to jump into TV and film, they don't consider production design.
Yep.
They would go and rent a house. The house is already fitted. I'll use this house and let's shoot, let's go. But we'll get into all those. But before we get into all those, just for people who want to learn and stuff, what is your process like? You've just been given a project. How do your creative gears get into action?
Okay. So first of all, I get the script. I sit down. I mean, for this, I would talk about applies to feature films, and television commercials, and short films. For series is a lot longer, and so I would need to get sort of like the spine of the story and build on that. But for like a feature film, so say I got a project for a feature film, I would get the script. I would read it like I was reading a novel first of all, so that I can immerse my mind into the story and see the world, the story world. And then when I finish that script, then I will read it a second time as a production designer. In which case, I will start to break the script down into, first of all, the number of sets, the number of scenes, and when I list out the number of scenes, then I would go back and break down each scene, bearing in mind all that I have learned about the characters who own those spaces, so when I take the scene, I would more or less start to paint a picture in my head about what the space is, what is best for the space, how much should be in the space, the level of clutter, all the items and all that. And I actually get to make, guesses about the numbers of items. So say it's 4 or 5 tables and I write it down. So I have a pretty thorough props and set dressing elements breakdown of every set, bearing in mind what color palette I want to put that space in. So when I do all that, I take my list, my comprehensive list, and then sit down and then do a mood board that is more for my team and for the clients, So I now make a selection of visual representations of everything that I have listed down in the right color palette, and when that is done, while that is being done, talks with the producer about seeing the actual spaces that I plan to create my sets in, So once I have done the mood board and we have locked down the spaces, the locations, I would go in there with my team. We would have a conversation, after my team has looked through my props list and my mood board. We would go into the spaces, with my set builders, with my set painters, with my art director, with my props master, and my set dresser. And we would talk about the space, and all that. of course, in the creation of all these, I'd carry them along because, no matter how imaginative my mind is, I could leave out one or two things. So sometimes, I'd get information from my set dresser or my props master to add to the list and all that, and then we will proceed to construction. And then
that's actually very
that's the
important. So you
process.
answered a couple of questions I was gonna ask you, so I'll just jump forward. Things around what do you think was missing in the process, which James had asked. And so my next question, I'll open with a scenario, right?
Okay.
Which is, the question is, how important is it for you to be on set as things are being built? And I'll tell you why. There was a particular movie, I'll mention the name. It was a period piece.
Sorry,
Okay.
I think one of my lines just stripped off. But keep going.
And the production designer had given instructions, had designed everything. But when they had hired a director who came on set and wanted something done in a particular way, I think the child had to open the door a certain way.
Okay.
So when the production designer showed up and he said that wouldn't be possible because at that time the doors wouldn't have hinges and that child wouldn't be able to physically move that door, which required to sort of rewrite the scene. It got so there was a conflict between the production manager's choice and the director, and they ended up firing the guy, but they still fixed the scene the way the production manager had actually prescribed. So how would you do?
Are you saying the production manager or the production designer?
Forgive me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How would you, that conflict? So how important is it to be there, and how would you deal with a conflict if it did arise?
Okay. So first of all, and this is why I try as much as possible to get in touch with the director early in the design process, to ensure that we are on the same page with my plans, and my plans work with his plans as well. It's a simple case of a disconnect. So the production design team had gone off on their own tangent, and they hadn't been that, and I get sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for the director to be at every space, and all that, to decide what he plans to do. Sometimes some ideas come to him or her, but I think that when the production designer, the director, and the cinematographer are aligned, from the beginning of the process, certain situations will be minimized almost completely. And it is possible to, not run into those troubles, So, but, that situation also has to do with the script, and that's why it's also very important to read the script, and even if you don't read the script for a series, you must make sure that a member of your team has done that, so that you always have somebody you can, check with on certain things. Obviously, if that was in the script, that activity, then it would have been clear that the production designer needed to make that door practical in that way, So obviously, he or she didn't read that aspect, and then, so, he'd have to take responsibility for that, really. Except it was a change that happened after the construction process had been agreed on, and
My question is, so what's missing in Nollywood space? And by Nollywood space, there's something I used in the last episode where I mentioned corporate Nollywood. So there's corporate Nollywood, and then there's Nollywood. By corporate Nollywood, I mean doing stuff for television, corporate television, corporate channels, NTA, AIT, whatever. And then Nollywood, which is the private people who go and do these films. What is missing there, and what do you think is a problem? Why do you think you stand out as a production designer? Like I said, I don't think anybody pays attention. Like sometimes I've seen, and this is the truth, I'm not showing that, I'm sorry, I've seen that the producer or the director is the production designer.
cases here.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Shouldn't be, though.
okay. So what is missing? What do you think is missing?
I mean, what is missing is the production design. I mean, no, but really, I mean, you see, you watch programs, and then when you watch the credits, you actually see that there is no production designer. You might see, and then again, there is the hilarious way that the art department is classified as set and props.
Yes.
And it tells you already how the producers perceive that this aspect of filmmaking should be set and props. And production design is not just set and props. But once you see that, you know that you're going to see deficiencies in the pictures, in the spaces and all that. So that role is absent in a lot of productions, you know.
I think a lot of people don't even realize that the production designer is the overall designer, creative designer for the entire production, and this includes set, props, costume,
Makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately a lot of filmmakers locally are not aware of the exact structure of a production team.
Yeah.
In terms of what roles should be taken care of and who should head those roles, you know, and job descriptions and things like that, because it doesn't just stop with the absence of the production designer. I see credits and I see certain things missing, you know, and I realize that, you know, I mean, after my first commercial, I went into music videos. And what music videos showed me was that we had a lot of filmmakers who multitasked. And, you know, I mean, while that is admirable, it also, you know, causes for the people to not realize that there are roles that should be, you know, given to specific people. I also think that when you multitask, certain roles suffer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what is evident in a lot of, you know, productions that we see, you know, so.
Okay. Ethan, you want to ask this question?
Movie question?
No.
He kind of sort of answered that. What do you
Commercials versus
TV.
when you come on TV.
So Uche already started comparing his process for commercials, and but I guess you could just make it a bit more explicit. So if I recall, you said for TV, you sort of look at the entire spline of the whole thing. So you start to build, because it's a longer process. You might not read all the scripts in the world.
It is a longer process.
But for commercials, you know, it's a one event. So, but are they mutually exclusive processes?
No, they're different. So, and I've said this before, and I'll say this again here. I consider commercials as a 100-meter sprint, and I consider TV and film as a marathon. So obviously, you know, it's the same running process, it's the same track, or so to speak, but the technique must be different. The training must be different. The way and manner in which you approach, you know, the execution of the work must be different. So I realized that what I took from my you know, time in television commercials, which I'm still in, is first of all the fact that you must be meticulous. You must run virtually everything through a set of people who are not on the same page as you. They're not creative in any way, and all that. So you are faced.
That process can be frustrating. I'm like, why is this work?
Why is it not green?
Why is it not green?
Yeah, but you see, it teaches you to actually think through your plans. So if you can convince the people who don't know anything about it, it means that you won't have a problem convincing the people who know, you know. But it forces you to think through everything, you know. And what I learned with commercials is that, you know, commercials are 60 seconds maximum. You must be able to tell a story in 60 seconds. How do you tell a story in 60 seconds? It's more about what you see than what is said. You know, so your space must tell the story even before the dialogue begins. You know, and for your space to tell the story means that you must be thorough in the way that you create that space. So I think I took that, you know, experience and tried to put it into television and film. There is the nitty gritty, the daily activities of television series, you know, which, you know, I'm still learning to deal with and understand. But what I do for television and television series is to build a framework, you know, and everything will now revolve around those, you know, major frameworks, you know. But I've taken that attention to detail in here now to make sure that whatever you see, you know, is strong, is memorable. You know, the characters don't need to do so much else, you know, to tell that story. They're already riding on a good platform, you know, and that's what I believe is missing a lot of times.
Makes sense. It's kind of like what they say about good photography.
Yes.
The bulk, 90% of the shots should be from the raw shot.
Yeah.
The guy who's editing just barely needs to touch.
Exactly.
Same thing with editing, I guess. A scene also
Exactly.
applies.
Because you'll be able to tell when they've, you know, when they pushed it too hard, you know, when the platform wasn't good enough and they were struggling to give it the shades and all that. Yeah.
So I think to see like what Uche is saying practically, there's this show we've been working on. I'm sure by the time this episode is out, the trailers will be on this code unbroken.
Guys always putting it.
Yeah, you know, it's shameless plug.
I thought he said we couldn't say it.
No. This one I can't. This one because by the time this episode comes out, you know, it's gonna be there. You know, it's a show that's executive produced by Jordan Stevens. You know, he's production designer on the show. The show premieres October 7th. Yeah, you know, trailer's gonna be dropping. You know, if the trailer's out, you know, I'm gonna put the link in the description.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, last question.
This is the last. This is a controversial part.
Yeah, no.
Okay, let's go.
Right, let's go. So,
you ready?
So 2 movies, locally and internationally. What do you like about the production design in both?
This guy asked it politically.
Oh, yeah, tell me. Sorry. Wait, hold on.
You need to name 2 local movies first. Okay. One you like the production design, and one you hate the production design. I mean, why you like it, why you hate it, and then we go to the other part. Stop being nice.
I'm not nice, yo.
So the same movie.
No.
2 local movies.
2 local
one
movies.
You like the production design,
Okay.
what you liked about it, and one you hate.
Let me know use the word hate. One that is a strong
one
word.
You
so
really
one you
hate.
No. One you didn't like.
Dislike
and why?
Or what you would have done differently.
What you'd have done differently, because I think because if you go one that you hated, everyone's gonna be like, you know, one you didn't like, what you thought you could have done differently.
Well, I mean, I don't think I.
Don't worry, they'll hire you.
No, no. I know one local production. No, actually, I know a couple of that I liked.
We just want one.
That I liked.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really know the names of some that I don't like.
If
You
tell
could
me
help
the
me
story,
if you.
I'll figure out the name. I'll Google
No, I
it.
mean,
Uche wants them to.
no.
That
no,
film where the guy fell down the stairs. I'll find it. I'll Google it. I got this.
No. Well,
Okay, let's talk about the one you liked first.
Yes.
What you liked about it.
I mean, there's a recent one. It wasn't so heavy on production design.
Okay.
It's called Lionheart.
You're right.
Yeah.
We talked about that movie. on this channel.
I think.
Yeah.
I've
Slightly.
I haven't finished that movie.
I think it was. I love you, Genevieve. It was decently done. I think it treated an aspect of a people and a business, and it treated it nicely. You know, it wasn't, you know, as thorough as some people would have loved it to be, but I think it was mature, and it was decently thought out. The spaces were believable. Okay. Yeah. So I think the production design was well thought out. It wasn't over the top. You know, they stuck to what was fair, what was justifiable. Yeah.
And this is not me, because somebody's going to misquote me and say I said.
Tell them I said.
Yeah, it's me. Unless you want to deep.
The camera was there.
There are only, and I'm not saying this because you're here. There are only about 3 people or 4 people that I know, and I said I know. I'm sure there are others, but I know that do really good production design. Lionheart, the person who did Lionheart was Pat Nebo. I've worked with Pat Nebo before, brilliant fellow. I love the guy. Like, I've met him like twice, 3 times. One in the elevator, I was too scared to talk to him. The second one came to the office. He did Ojuri. I don't know if you guys have seen Ojuri. He did production design for that. Very cool guy. So there's him, there's you, then there's Victor. I don't know any other. Victor Akpan. Yeah. He's done a couple of stuff for he learned under partner, but done a lot of stuff for Kunle Afolayo also. Okay. But I think those are the only 3 people that I know. I really have. There's a South African guy called Mpo. Never worked with him, but he's done a lot of stuff for the channel. By channel, I mean like for African Magic.
Okay.
But like I said, these are the only people that I know. I don't know any other person. You know, if there is, I'm sorry, but yeah, you know. But Lionheart, it was Pat Nebo that did it. I've seen the movie in batches. I've still never finished it. One of the things I loved was the color scheme for Genevieve's office, the green. It was really good. Yeah. And I think that's something that people don't look out for. You have a scene where they're like the blue walls, red chairs, fuchsia, pink, something. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you see, the issue of color is a significant issue. Obviously, we still get back to the issue of the absence of the production designer, because all these fall within his or her jurisdiction, you know. But the issue of color is so crucial that you can start pointing in directions, you know, before the people begin to talk, and it's strong if you get it right. You know, if you miss it, even if a person, you know, couldn't point to the direction of color, he would know, or she would know, that something is wrong with the pictures, because the colors are supposed to bring harmony, visual harmony, you know, and then they're also supposed to. So sometimes we can use colors to describe the characters as well, you know, in terms of their state of mind or their personalities, you know, and we can also use colors to set the tone for the general mood of the particular scene. So they're a very strong tool. I think the major problem that I've seen is filmmakers take what they get. So they always feel like we should manage.
Like the audience or filmmakers?
Let's just not just the audience.
Okay, like
the producers,
right?
You know. So we get a location, but
It's not suited to what we're looking for.
but we're gonna manage anyway. You know, we just
Make it work.
we just manage anyway.
Can you make this work?
You just,
Even though you can't move it,
But they never do.
Okay,
They
so
never do make it
what's
work.
the international? So
yeah, that was one,
the
right?
international movie. I mean, you said
So technically, that was a local international. No, but I want
It's
the
a local
international-
movie.
No, but I want the international
It
one.
was a local movie.
So like a cinema blockbuster that you think production has been great.
Has been great.
Great.
Let me see. There was a film, Hugo. It's a couple of years ago. It actually won Best Production Design. It was a great film. Great colors, great production design. You know, again, there is also an aspect of filmmaking that, you know, I've had a conversation with some directors before about the CGI and production design. Where does CGI end? Where does production design begin? Because for Hugo, there were significant aspects of the film that were CGI. So, you know, it was also then that conversation and that conflict and all that. So it did win best production design, but was it all production design?
No.
As you know.
I mean, but in this case, I would agree, because here's the thing: even if we were to create CGI spaces, they would consult a production.
Yes, yes, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
So you have
Of
that
course.
idea had to come from the production designer.
Yes.
CGI is
Yes.
created out of lack of
Yes.
physical structure
Physical
or
structure.
resources.
True.
So
True.
I would probably agree that
True.
it does belong to.
And again, a director said to me that, funny enough, the emergence of CGI, which is computer generated imagery for
That's the guess you didn't know.
don't know that the emergence didn't necessarily reduce the work
Yeah.
of production design in terms of set builds and all that. In fact, if anything, it made it a bit more complex because the set build must get to a point where there is a smooth transition, for the CGI to commence. There are requirements in set build to ensure that the CGI works well.
Like Avengers Infinity War, when
The whole Marvel.
when they first what's the guy's name? When Iron Man them went out into the streets. So part of it was they did it a lot. So they erected some structures, but the rest of the structures was like majorly CGI. Which was even Boardwalk Empire, same thing.
Great show.
Great show.
That show is CGI everywhere, but you can't really tell.
You can't really tell. Thank you very much, Uche, for coming through. Any last words? That sounds like I want to kill you. Any last
it does sound
words,
weird.
my friend?
Especially since you guys are working together.
Sound like about to give his last paycheck.
Like,
That's what Uche.
thank you.
Yeah,
Well done, huh?
Yeah, but yeah, anything for people who think that this is an industry they want to get into, or just any advice? Sorry, hold on. Before somebody has a question. Yo!
Not like the second or the third
What the
time.
hell? Okay, so this time you need to come to the mic,
Yeah,
yo.
next question.
Yeah. Alright.
Put your shirt on first.
Wow!
Gotta give you guys an impression of what's happening in the back.
Okay. So my question is, what's the difference between an art director and a production designer? Yep.
All right, thank you. A production designer is the overall head of the art department, which encompasses the set build, the set construction, set dressing, props, makeup, and hair, and costume. Now, the art director is the on-set creative head who is in charge specifically of the floor area of the sets and managing the all the other subheads in the art department. And
It's kind of like an
answers to-
executive producer and a producer.
Yeah, so he answers to the production designer. And I think there was a film, I think Gone with the Wind or something, I'm not very sure.
This was before all of
It came about because of the scope of the work of the art department. It was originally just the art director, but I think for that film, it became evident that the scope of work was so large that the art director couldn't deal with it all, and this responsibility was now coined out and separated. So you could have a production designer or production designers with several art directors. So if we took like maybe Game of Thrones, for instance, that was being shot over different places, maybe like different countries. You had several art directors in those places, all answerable to the production designer who took responsibility for the vision of the film generally.
Okay. So my question is for people like me who are just content creators for first screens, YouTube, social platforms. This is the first time I know about this in depth. I've seen it happen because I work for him. But is this really, 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 what importance does it play in our type of content?
every content requires a plan. Every content requires a plan, and if you come in with a plan, whether the medium is online or it's TV or it's phones, you know, you must project visual harmony, and to do that you must get a person who can create or rather translate your script or your screenplay, you know, into an appropriate combination of pictures in terms of the spaces. So you do need this kind of person. However, depending on the size of your production, you know, you don't necessarily need a person with that title in some cases. So when I function, yes, when I work in commercials, you know, I'm functioning as an art director, you know, and I have my props master or my props mistress, you know. So the hierarchy depends on the scope of work that the production requires. Yeah.
Let me give you an example. It's like sometimes a lot of people, and I'm speaking from the producer's point of view, sometimes a lot of people don't know what a supervising producer is. So in some productions, you have an executive producer, you have a supervising producer, you have a series producer, and you're asking yourself, why am I paying these people that much salary? If I was to get a supervising producer, I would get a supervising producer if I had multiple jobs. So for instance, if I'm doing this TV show and maybe I had like 3 TV shows under my, you know, whatever, and then each of those TV shows had their own producers, then I would get a supervising producer who would supervise those 3 producers and report to me. Do you understand? Because they are large productions. But if I had a simple, like a 5 minutes YouTube, whatever, I would just have a producer, right? And that's all. So like you said, depending on the scale, there's certain people, you don't have to have 2 production managers. On the job we're doing, we have 2 production managers, and each production manager has their own coordinators and co. On small jobs, no, you don't. You just get you get one producer, and that producer can be a production manager at the same time. The person can be the production manager, then you can have one coordinator working with the person, and that person can have an assistant. So it's really on the scale. Like you said, if it's a small YouTube stuff, get an art director. But it's always important so that whatever it is that you're portraying, you have that visual harmony, and then, you know, you have somebody whose job it is to make sure that this thing you are doing, this is what it is. I'm going to win this tennis. Did you give me any? What? Why are you doing? Tennis doing like this? We'll fight. Yeah, whatever, man. I got 1 hour more. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you get my point. So that's really what it is. But anyway, thank you for all the questions, guys. Remember, please, if you have any questions, simply email us at theindustry@jamesmulker@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media at theindustry_JO. Which is very conservative, man. So he's hardly on social media. On Instagram, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, something like that.
I am.
So
on Facebook.
That was it. I'm gonna put his Facebook and Instagram. I put his Facebook.
When people still do Facebook.
So I'm gonna put his Instagram. You know, right there. And then I'll also big shout out to Tola Jai. I'm gonna put that encounter so that people see it. Unfortunately, all the other work, I'd have to find it. But again, if you want to see any of the things that he's currently done or he's about to do, it's October 7th, Unbroken. Don't miss it. For everybody here, please click on the notification bell so you know when episodes are coming out. Next, this is episode 7. Episode 8 next week, Wednesday. Don't miss it. Yeah. So from everybody here is James. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm going back to my next event.
Oh yeah. Samsung what?
It's Microsoft.
Okay.
And Google I/O. Yeah. I'll be here next week.
Yeah.
I'll be back just in time.
All right, man.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Good night.
Good night.